Opinion is India's military future ready? A deep dive into defense reforms. India's armed forces today stand at an inflection point, strategically recalibrating to navigate a world increasingly shaped by multipolarity, emerging technologies, and non-traditional security threats. Since the liberalization era of 1991, India's defense transformation has been steadily progressing, and recent policy shifts mark a new era of ambition and innovation. But do these steps sufficiently prepare the military to confront present and future threats? The economic reforms of 1991 not only unlocked market potential but also catalyzed structural thinking within India's strategic community. Over the following decades, reforms such as the Defence Procurement Procedure (DPP), the formation of the Defence Acquisition Council (DAC), and a more open approach to private and foreign participation in defense manufacturing redefined the contours of military modernization. Institutional innovations or structural changes included establishment of Strategic Forces Command, HQ of Integrated Defense Staff, and the Andaman-Nicobar Command. By the MID-2000s, the focus had shifted toward increasing transparency and indigenization, particularly through the expansion of DRDO LED projects and a growing private sector role. The 2010s witnessed the mainstreaming of digital procurement systems and increased international collaboration. The cumulative effect of these developments created the scaffolding upon which current reforms rest. The formation of the Department of Military Affairs (DMA) in 2020 introduced a much-needed focus on jointness and interoperability. The DMA was particularly significant in devolving ministerial powers to military leadership based on domain expertise, streamlining decision-making processes, and enhancing civil-military coordination. The year 2025 has come to be known as a turning point, dubbed the Year of Reforms, as Ministry of Defence aims announcement and rollout of several landmark initiatives. This included acceleration of indigenous capital acquisition projects, deeper integration of dualist technologies via IDEX, structural overhaul of the quality assurance regime under DGQA, and plans to open up defense testing infrastructure to private innovators. These policy moves reflect a broader strategic vision that seeks not only to modernize but also to democratize access and foster innovation in defense manufacturing and R&D. In recent years, administrative reforms within the Ministry of Defense have focused on enhancing the speed, transparency, and responsiveness of decision-making. There has been a decisive move toward digitization, whether through e-procurement platforms or electronic workflow systems. This region portal, launched to encourage domestic defense manufacturing, has facilitated direct engagement between the armed forces and industry, while also fostering accountability. One of the landmark developments has been the corporatization of the Ordnance Factory Board into 7 defense PSUs, which has allowed for greater autonomy, flexibility, and competitiveness, aligning defense production with contemporary management practices. Complementing this shift, NITII's Law and Security vertical, established as part of its evolving role in policy innovation, has contributed to strategic thinking on defense reforms, interagency coordination, and long-term capability planning. Its insights have helped shape pathways for resource optimization, indigenization strategies, and regulatory harmonization in defense-related sectors. The vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat in defense has found expression in a comprehensive push for indigenization. The strategic partnership model and successive positive indigenization lists have catalyzed domestic industry participation across key military platforms. From fighter aircraft like the LCA Tejas Mk2 to long-range precision strike systems and indigenous drones, DRDO and Indian private manufacturers have stepped up significantly. India's growing defense exports, ranging from coastal surveillance systems to artillery equipment, are reflective of this maturation. However, a critical question remains: can this momentum be scaled to meet both strategic imperatives and commercial benchmarks simultaneously? India's armed forces are embedding sustainability as a strategic variable. Efforts to green the battlefield through solar-powered infrastructure, electrification of base logistics, and the adoption of alternative fuels are transforming energy planning in operational theaters. These green solutions do more than address environmental concerns, they also reduce logistical vulnerabilities, particularly in remote, high-altitude, or conflict-prone zones, where supply chains are susceptible to disruption. The concept of a circular economy is also gaining traction within defense infrastructure planning, with initiatives focusing on defense recycling corridors to reprocess and repurpose obsolete weapon systems, electronics, and metals, thereby reducing both waste and dependency on essential imports. Another critical axis of reform lies in the securitization of critical minerals. Modern military capabilities are fundamentally dependent on rare earths and other strategic materials used in semiconductors, high-performance alloys, and communication systems. Recognizing this, the Government of India has initiated a coordinated approach involving the Ministry of Defence, Ministry of Mines, and Ministry of External Affairs to map dependencies and secure resilient supply chains. Bilateral partnerships and resource-sharing agreements are being explored to bolster this effort. The question arises: how resilient will India's critical mineral strategy be in the face of geopolitical volatility? India's military is also undergoing a deep technological infusion, encompassing AI, cyber defense, and space-based capabilities. Through initiatives like Innovations for Defense Excellence (IDEX), the Defense AI Council, and partnerships with leading academic institutions, the armed forces are beginning to leverage AI-driven decision systems, autonomous platforms, and quantum communication frameworks. India's representation in the National Quantum Mission ensures that military imperatives are integrated early into quantum computing and communication technologies, offering a strategic edge in futuristic warfare scenarios. However, to fully realize this potential, there is a pressing need to formally include representatives from the armed forces in the governance and strategic direction of the National Quantum Mission. Their operational insights and domain requirements can significantly align RD efforts with defense objectives. Additionally, proposals to create frontier technology hubs focused on dual-use innovations spanning from advanced materials to hypersonics promise to align cutting-edge research with operational requirements. But are we scaling fast enough to build credible deterrence in algorithmic warfare environments? Concurrently, India faces an evolving threat landscape marked by gray zone conflicts, cyber attacks, and the proliferation of unmanned systems. The armed forces are investing in integrated ISR intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance systems, predictive logistics platforms, and autonomous combat technologies. Joint training for multi-domain operations is being institutionalized to improve responsiveness across land, sea, air, space, and cyber domains. The future readiness of the armed forces will hinge on how quickly they internalize and adapt to these dynamic operational paradigms. Can these reforms provide real-time combat agility, or will legacy systems act as inertia? India's defense diplomacy is also evolving as an extension of strategic reform. From the co-production of jet engines with the United States to trilateral naval exercises in the Indo-Pacific and expanding defense exports to Africa and Southeast Asia, the emphasis is on building both technological depth and geopolitical alignment. These partnerships serve a dual purpose: enhancing access to cutting-edge platforms while supporting India's drive for strategic autonomy. The balance between indigenization and interdependence is delicate but increasingly sophisticated. Swipe left for next video. India's defense reforms reflect clarity of purpose towards self-reliance, responsiveness, and technological sovereignty. Yet, implementation and institutional maturity will define their ultimate success. As threats evolve and alliances shift, India's ability to adapt administratively, technologically, and strategically will determine whether it emerges not just as a regional power, but as a reliable global security actor. Will these reforms deliver a future-ready Indian military, or will they remain works in progress? The answer lies in sustained execution and strategic foresight, not just ambition. Majgen K. Narayanan is a military expert who has served the Indian military force for decades and now serves at NITI Aayog as program director. Darpajit Singh Gupta is a fellow at NITI Aayog. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the authors. They do not necessarily reflect NEWS18's views. Latest blogs.